It's the law.
Welcome to It's the Law, a program produced and presented by the Guyana Association of Women Lawyers. On this program, a member of the association gives us an in-depth look at Guyana's laws. The contributor on today's program is Shalon Boyce.
Today, it's my pleasure to be with you in your company, and I'm going to speak to you on the topic trafficking in persons. Trafficking in persons is a very important subject within our country today, and all the laws governing trafficking in person comes under the Combating of Trafficking in Persons Act. This is an important act to us as citizens of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. You may ask yourself, what is trafficking? Trafficking simply means it's any recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receiving a person by means of threat or the use of force or other means of coercion. Or it could be by abduction, by deception, or fraud, and also by abuse of power and by using one's position of authority. When we think of trafficking in persons, it should take us all to those persons who are either placed into conditions without their free will. So whether it's for sexual purposes, whether it's for labor, it does not matter. Trafficking is illegal, and trafficking in persons is an offense punishable by law in Guyana. One may say someone consented, for example, to the act of sex, but it's important to know that once it is trafficking in person, there is no consent. So consent is not a defense. No one can say, well, party A consented to be used for sexual gain. It is still punishable by law. Another instance I would like to bring to you is, for example, sex workers, which is very important in the trafficking in persons world. No one can use that act as being a sex worker as a defense to trafficking, to say, well, party A is a sex worker, so then how can I traffic that person? Or party A would usually have more than one partners, so then how can I traffic such an individual? Your sexual preferences, your sexual activities cannot be used as a defense if someone is charged for trafficking in persons and you're the victim. I would encourage everyone listening today, if you know of someone or some activity whether it's an adult or a child who's being trafficked, to immediately report any such activity. If someone is convicted of the offense of trafficking in persons, that individual can also be made to pay a restitution to their victim. And for all the persons who would have survived being trafficked, I would encourage you not only to share your stories, but to seek to empower others so that they as well can become a survivor against this great inhumanity, this grievous offense. In Guyana, trafficking in persons matters, the offenses that come under the legislation, the Combating of Trafficking in Persons Act, one who is charged may appear before a magistrate's court, and a person may also appear before a judge in a high court, depending on whether the matter is summarily laid or it is indictable. It is very important within each and every one of our communities that we be aware of the laws and be aware so as to empower ourselves and the members of our community against persons who would not want to adhere to rules and regulations. Within the subject of trafficking in persons, there is also the offense of exploitation. And simply, exploitation means keeping a person in a state, whether it's slavery or otherwise, subjecting them to practices and compelling or causing them to provide, whether it's forced labor or service, or keeping them in some state of servitude, which includes sexual acts as well, against their will. And for any offense under the Trafficking in Persons umbrella, under the Act, for any offense, simply put, the offense must consist of at least these three elements. There must firstly be the recruitment, the transportation, the transfer, the harboring or the receiving of a person. And so one may say, well, I didn't go and recruit these persons or take this person from point A to B without their permission. But that person might have received the individual who was recruited, and that person as well is liable under the law. So you have the first umbrella of the recruitment, the transportation, the transfer, the harboring or the receiving a person. And the second element would be the means of the threat or the use of force or any other means of coercion or abduction or fraud or deception. And I spoke earlier about the abuse of power and the position of the vulnerable and the abuse of persons who are in a position and exercise control and authority over the vulnerable. And so once that element is satisfied and proven, the third element would be the purpose of exploitation. So for instance, the recruitment, and it may be the recruitment, for example, with the use of force, where someone is abducted from their home or place of work, and then that individual is placed to work and they're being exploited. Simply put, it is very important for us to remember that not only each and every member of our communities have a role and a responsibility to be vigilant and to report those who break the law and those who participate in this act of trafficking in persons, but for us also to remember that consent, certainly there is no consent to one being trafficked, and there is no immunity where the person who is committing the offense can use, whether it's a person's age, a person's sexual preference, a person's occupation, a person's previous employment, or any of that against that person as a defense, as a shield, once they are charged and placed before a court of law in Guyana. So I spoke of the act that governs trafficking in persons in Guyana, the Combating of Trafficking in Persons Act. And you may say to yourself, but where can I find this act? Where can I learn more about this interesting and important topic? You can be able to access the act on the Ministry of Legal Affairs website. So if you go on the internet and you type in Ministry of Legal Affairs, there's a section that deals with laws of Guyana. You can, in that section, type in and download the act. You can also find the act on the Parliament of Guyana website, and the act is in there in detail. Certainly, the libraries, the court libraries, the National Library, they will all have this legislation. Social workers, they would have access as well. Police officers, the police stations, they would also have and be able to guide for persons in communities who would like to learn more. And there are a number of NGOs, in addition, who do a lot of voluntary work in this area of trafficking in persons, and there are a lot of organizations who provide support. So you're encouraged to equip yourself and to, as best as possible, protect yourself and those in your community from being taken advantage of. And that brings me to the end of my little talk with you on trafficking in persons. I would like you to, after you would have listened to what I have said, to do some more reading and to know that what I have said is only a small part and only a small portion of the law as it relates to trafficking in persons. And there are much more to this act, to this subject, and it is one that is very, very important. It is an offense. If one is charged, if one is found guilty, one will be in prison. And as I would have said, one can also be made to pay restitution to the survivor of a trafficking in person matter. Thank you for listening.
You have been listening to It's the Law, a program produced and presented by the Guyana Association of Women's Lawyers. The contents of this program are not to be taken instead of legal advice.